Happy Sunday, everybody. I'm Dr. Gregory, and you're watching Dr. Gregory's Meta Moments. This is episode 17. Last week, we spoke about the biology of belief, and in fact, we've been spending a little more time on that particular book. So I decided to move back onto metaphysical anatomy because I absolutely love this book, and I have two diagnoses in mind that I'm going to be reading about today. The first will be endometriosis, and the second will be Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune disease which attacks the thyroid. It's your own body attacking your thyroid, causing an inflammatory process. So let's start with endometriosis. You've suppressed your creativity and passion in life. You might have a fear of having children, as your own childhood experiences may have been traumatic. You have a fear your childhood history will repeat itself. You may also be attached to your independence, as this is where you feel most powerful. Bearing a child might challenge your ability to be independent of others. You might feel that being dependent on others will inevitably invite circumstances that will make you feel controlled and trapped. Your life has been consumed by responsibilities, a lack of guidance, and having to fend for yourself. You need a break from this strenuous and challenging lifestyle. You seem to feel quite resentful of being a female, always pulling the short end of the rope in society. You have seen women being treated unfairly, abused, or disrespected, causing you to try to avoid experiencing the same treatment. You feel unable to access your feminine power. You feel your foundation is brittle. There is no solid ground to fall back on whenever you are faced with challenges. This may cause you to feel very insecure, scared, or unsure of your ability to cope with life. Everything up until this point has been hostile and traumatizing. You often revert to an aggressive state to keep yourself safe and to establish clear boundaries. You might feel under attack, either verbally or physically, by influential females in your life. Your experience with love may have been intensely traumatic, destructive, and left a deep emotional scar. You want to be creative, yet you feel controlled. You feel attacked and judged. You don't feel safe to truly express yourself or be loved by the people you should feel safe with. Communicating your emotions, concerns, or fears was never an option. You may have been ridiculed, rejected, or taken advantage of whenever you opened yourself up and reached out for comfort and support. You had to toughen up very early in life. And if you didn't, then your circumstances would have mentally and emotionally consumed you. There's often a big conflict between what you see, how you feel, and how you should express it. Often you choose to suppress yourself as you've been introduced to the collective consciousness that women cannot speak up. This one really hits home, not because I had have endometriosis, but my mother's mother did, my grandmother did. And believe it or not, she did express herself quite a bit. She was very strong-minded woman, very intelligent woman, but she talked about how she was victimized essentially by being married off at a very young age. It was an arranged marriage with my grandfather, which they ended up having a good marriage, and he did love her very much. However, she talked a lot about having been ripped away from her childhood, not having finished school, not even having the opportunity to get past elementary school, I believe. And at 15, she was married off to my grandfather when he was 25. And having children at a young age as well. She had my mother when she was barely 16 or 17, I believe. So I feel like this is very complimentary, or I shouldn't say that. This is very consistent with how my grandmother feels or felt when I read these words. As if she was unable to access her feminine power. She had a tremendous amount of resentment for not being able to be in a generation where careers were an option for women. And she was a stay-at-home mom and wife. And so that became her dominion. She was in profound control of that. She did become very aggressive if things didn't go her way in her dominion. So it was interesting because she felt, again, suppressed as a woman for a lot of reasons, mainly in choosing how she would provide for her family outside of the home. That was not an option for her. and neither was schooling. So again, she was very resentful. My mother, on the other hand, my grandfather was very supportive of my mother being an educated woman, being a professional woman. And I'm sure my grandmother pushed her in that same way too, because what she didn't have the access to, she wanted my mother to have access to. So this is in Turkey, by the way. My mother is a doctor, and so she was sent to school. She finished school, went to medical school. She actually met my father in medical school. And I don't recall my mom ever having said anything about having female issues or endometriosis or anything of that nature. So I do find that intriguing, because I do know that endometriosis can run in families. And I personally, again, don't have any of these concerns either. But again, I grew up more like my mom did, where I was empowered as a woman. I was empowered as a professional and empowered to be an educated woman. So that's an interesting health process that people go through. And I really wonder, you ladies out there who do suffer from endometriosis, and again, the more severe it is, the more mental trauma you may have sustained in your childhood years or even adult years. So like, see these connections and see how that might affect you and how that might have affected your life physically and mentally. Okay, so that was endometriosis. Let's move on to Hashimoto's. You seem to have many self-sabotaging patterns that make you feel like you have to deprive yourself of goodness in life. You may have experienced a childhood where guilt or abuse was used to control and manipulate you. You're in fear of making a mistake or doing something that would provoke an influential person, always trying too hard to avoid being punished. Dominant, controlling, or influential people, such as a father or authority figure, have disempowered you. Your gender was seen as a weak link in society, and you were suppressed or manipulated into believing that you had a very limited purpose and role. Throughout the ancestral line in childhood, you may feel that you have endured hardship, strain, isolation, suppression, and especially heavy responsibilities. You have had enough and need to live a life your own way. You may feel you need to take a break from circumstances that would create more responsibilities. You seem to have an unconscious fear that more responsibilities will overwhelm and deplete you, provoking old trauma and memories. You've been through many cycles of having other people's involvement cause you great stress, strain, disempowerment, or emotional pain. You feel attacked and poisoned by the current environment, the collective consciousness, and the history of your environment. You may have become stuck in blaming influential people and circumstances for causing you pain, stress, and upset. You've given power away, and you're too afraid to regain your place of power and position in life. You've been pushed down and attacked when you expressed yourself or stood your ground and followed a direction of your own choosing. Being small and staying out of the bigger picture kept you safe and out of harm's way. You may have traumatic ancestral memories that involve a great deal of suppression, life-threatening circumstances, slavery, rape, incest, and abuse by very powerful and influential people. Your current or past circumstances may have triggered and stirred up these old traumas. Wow, these are interesting. So here's some key questions they asked, which I didn't do for the other one, but I think this one's going to be poignant. What are you sabotaging in your life, and how does that make you feel? Rejection and abandonment trauma. Your need for love, acceptance, and safety was met by trauma. Who made you feel this way? Explore these associations. Wow. How are the emotions that are connected to the traumas surfacing in your life? Remember, the trauma will never always be the same, but the circumstances and other traumas could trigger old, similar, suppressed trauma. Explore the difference between the ancestral trauma and your own trauma. Suppression and trauma related to being controlled. Who or what suppressed and controlled you, and how does it make you feel? Trauma related to feeling like a victim of circumstance. You may feel stuck like a victim as you were traumatized by the past. This may have left you in a state of shock, numbness, or feeling frozen. Feeling traumatized and burdened by too much responsibility in the past and feeling manipulated into circumstances. How did that make you feel? Trauma related to feeling unprotected. Unprotected by whom, and what were the circumstances, and how did that make you feel? Okay, the last one. Oh, invasion trauma and not being able to speak up about it. Explore the stages. Very interesting, guys. So I don't have any personal relationships with people who have specifically Hashimoto's thyroiditis, but as I said before, I have a number of patients who have presented to me for consultation with that being their past medical history. Hopefully this helps you all out. I'm going to go back to why I read these chapters. So you're thinking, okay, yeah, so I went through that and I'm dealing with that and I have this disease. Now what? Again, the mind and the body are closely interrelated. So if you have the same triggers, the same behavioral responses, the same patterns of behavior, and your mind is receiving that information, guess what signals it's giving to your cells? The same signals that created the damage or disease to those body organs in the first place. So how can you change your circumstance? You change your circumstance by changing your thoughts, how you react to the world, how you perceive the world. And it starts with you. That's why when I went back to my chapter about peptic ulcer disease, and I suffered from peptic ulcer disease from age 15 until 42, when I went back and read the chapter, I said I was reading my diary because that's the life I was living at the time. But by the time my symptoms completely disappeared at age 42, I was no longer living that life. I had gone through tremendous life changes, mainly through trauma, actually. I had gone through some traumatic rupture of family relationships, and I was estranged from some family members for a period of time. And it was a powerful disconnect, but it was because of that disconnect that I realized I do not need the approval of family members or other people I considered influential in my lifetime in order to feel whole or complete. I realized the only person I really needed to care about, love, and approve of was myself. That was the most important, and I did not need to seek it from the outside. It came from within, and that was enough. That was enough. And because of that, I am literally symptom-free of that disease. Literally, it's incredible. So again, the first step is essentially awareness. You see that you can resonate with some of these emotional behavioral patterns, and you have this particular disease, endometriosis, Hashimoto's, whatever it is that I happen to read about for you guys, and see if you can potentially, when you engage with other people, when you engage with your environment, and you recognize those triggers, what are you going to do about them this time? How are you going to react this time? It is a slow process, but it can change in a quantum second. Your condition can change in a quantum second. I know this from personal experience. I tried over years to try to get myself off of medications to help my peptic ulcer disease, and it really wasn't about the medication. It was not. It was about my perception of the world. Thanks for listening, everybody. Love you all. Chapter 17 or episode 17 is all over.